This is Charles,
This is Emmanuel.
and you are listening to
Blight makes right.
the original Legion of Everblight podcast. How you doing, man? It's good to be back recording again.
I'm doing great. It feels really good. It's been a while. Like there was a while there where we just did not have time, and we had a lot to talk about. And I'm glad we're finally gonna get to sit down on the mic, even despite having some technical
Yeah.
difficulties tonight.
Hey, I mean, I think anyone who podcasts or records anything knows that sometimes stuff just does not work out exactly as you want it to.
Without a doubt.
Yep,
But that's why we play war games, because we get better at that skill
for
specifically.
sure. It's all a strategy, right? You're preparing for the worst. Just like with podcasting, you're preparing for technical failures. War Machine, you're preparing to get diced.
You know what's funny? So I was in my office today and I found one of my old webcams from when we first started, like thinking about webcam stuff. And now I
Yeah.
have like five webcams. Two of them are 1080p. And tonight I'm podcasting off my phone.
Yeah. This stuff just happens.
So,
Um, all right, well let's dive into stuff. So, kind of post Oblivion is what we want to get into now. So
mhm.
we've reviewed all of the theme forces. Now it's like what sort of stuff when you start digesting lists, like what stuff do you want to put on the table? And I had a tournament last month where I was like, okay, I need to shake some rust off. I want to get some games in, start preparing.
Mhm.
But I didn't want to do anything too foreign, too crazy because I had a kind of a lull in games and I wanted to still play clean and play strong and like get good practice in. So
Mhm.
I went back to Callus after the break because I was like, I'd played a lot of Veil 1 and I had been practicing some Animag. Um, but it felt like, okay, let's see what Callus is like. So this list I went with, I wanted to put the Blightbringer back into the list now that we have the
Mhm.
Oblivion rules. And so it was Blightbringer and Go Lab, but I was running double chosen, one unit of birds, still the double Hellmouth, still Amok, and then I have a Feralgeist and two Spell Martyrs. Um, what's
Mhm.
cool, one variant that I've been talking about with Donnie was that instead of running one full unit of birds, you can run two min units, but
Mhm.
you lose 2 points. And in the end, I decided I wanted the extra solos as opposed to in that version, the Feralgeist is a Gobber Chef and you have one Spell Martyr, whereas in this version you have a Feralgeist and two Spell Martyrs, and you lose two birds. It is cool, like being able to operate the birds as two smaller packages because you can
Mhm.
spread them out more. The command range is better, but with the way I was looking at scenarios, I was like, man, I feel like I need the solos. Um, and then that list, I'll have to remember the exact Thagralash list that I put together, but it was, I believe, Typhon, Seraph, Golab, two Nerfs, and then it had Warmongers with Gorag, Amok, and it had obviously double Hellmouth. The idea with this list was to use Fog of War and his feat to potentially kind of just be able to weather some guns a bit more. Where like, yeah, heavy's going to get shot off the table, but then I'm going to put it back, and hopefully with hopefully with having that feat and having Fog of War, it just dulls the shooting at least a little. That was my theory anyway. um,
You're not wrong. He definitely does exactly that.
yeah. So I just did a 3 round event. God, now I'm even. Oh, the first matchup I had was Grimkin, and so I got a good match against the Dreamer. Um, and I just remember this ended up basically being a scenario drag out dirty slog. It was my first time playing against clockatrices, which is really funny because my first one I kept going, "Did you want to stutter?" And he's like, "No, you haven't actually taken out an aspect." I got it down to like 3 health, or it was not 3 health, but it was like 5 health, and it had all of its aspects,
Convenient.
which is kind of the opposite of what you'd normally want. But um,
In the weird Grimkin meta, that's what you get.
yeah, exactly. Oh, and the Thagrosh list also had a Feralgeist, a Spell Martyr, and two Forsaken. So otherwise, I
Mhm.
had it right. Um, So, got to warm up that way. Then I played a game against Infernals. Again, so this was playing into Zadaroth. Obviously, they still don't have all of their stuff yet. And he didn't feat on the turn that he wanted to. So I was able to keep leveraging things pretty hard. And he was learning to play Infernals. So, again, it's not like it ended up being a pretty one-sided game, but I think that was more from him shaking rust off and me playing something I'm really experienced with.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the third round, I got a Legion mirror, and he was practicing his champions lists for Attack X event. So he had Callus 1 in Children of the Dragon and uh, Lilith 1 in maybe I'm getting stuff confused. The Lilith, I think the Lilith list was Ravens of War, but he was trying the Callus list for champions. But the idea was that he wanted to be able to shoot a turtle off the table, and
Mm-hmm.
so I think it had like double striders in it. It had, I think, a Ravagore, a bolt thrower, a Blightbringer. And it was a lot of guns. Like,
Mm.
and so, and it definitely shot a lot of stuff. Like with Lilith having Parasite, he put a lot of work into my army really fast. Um, but in the end, I was able to stay up on scenario, and then eventually he went for an assassination run on Thagrosh, which just didn't quite pay off.
Well, and like you said, Thagrosh neuters guns. So
Yeah. The funny thing is I never cast Fog of War because we had talked about how little it was going to do against his army, and then I
it's true.
forgot that he had Kralix, and almost every single Kralix shot would have missed if I had cast Fog of War.
Sometimes it's the little things.
Yeah, and I was just like, even though almost his entire army ignored Fog of War, it still actually would have made a huge difference had I actually cast it. But
Mm.
but anyway, so my afterthoughts is I did really like playing Callus with the Blightbringer. It protects Callus more, like giving him +2 armor, giving the
Mm-hmm.
chosen armor. Like it does add another defensive aspect, and that list does resist guns more than my other version. But I will say the Blightbringer gets a big target, and I'm constantly every single game I was like, wait a minute. I feel like he could still probably get a heavy to the Blightbringer. Like if he kills this stuff in the way, like, the first game I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he could still probably get a Skin and Moans onto the Blightbringer if he really wanted to. And I think it might die. And so that definitely got me thinking like, I have to be more careful with the Blightbringer. I can't just like you can't just be like, I want to keep everything in its bubble, because it's just you're gonna get the Blightbringer killed.
It's true. I, especially when I play Animag, play the Blightbringer as my late game anchor. I mean, it's one of my only two war beasts, so I really need the Fury anyways.
Yeah,
And its gun is great support by fire. You can shoot a tentacle or a Failgeist or a Gremlin Swarm in the back and pop its AoE on a unit of Chosen, and it can just be useful. But JVM said something to me once when we were discussing his version of the Callus list after I'd watched his video, uh, and thought, man, I need to try this in practice. And he was right over and over and over again. It was, if you have to trade the Blightbringer or your army, you always trade the Blightbringer. Because especially with Animag, I found she can amplify all of the things that her troops do a lot easier and cut herself, and still be survivable.
yeah,
And Callus is very similar in that he has hyper regeneration and he troop amplifies, but doesn't do a ton for the Blightbringer. And so it really can pay off that if they go and target the Blightbringer down, but you have the rest of your army unmolested and in a really good position, you can probably still win that fight.
yeah. And I think that is something because like for comparison's sake, that Blightbringer was essentially me trading 2 Nerfs and a unit of Rotwings. But I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
also free up some points for solos, so it's not like a straight trade because it's basically, so if you're comparing the list to like JVM's list, basically I lose Rot Wings and I lose the more expensive Solo, but I get Golab. And so in there, that feels
Money.
like a no-brainer. And the
Yeah.
reason why I put the Blightbringer back in, because I was really thinking that um, it's just about running some of the most cost-effective pieces in the game. And I
Without a
found a
doubt.
lot of the time with Callus, I couldn't keep all of the tentacles and all of the Rotwings in his control area anyway. Like,
Hmm.
if I want to spread them out enough that they're not easily being caught by sprays and AoEs and stuff and do my normal, like, strong positioning, they're just they're just not all going to get in. It's just not realistic. So I ended up finding that um, one unit was still solid. I would love to run the two min units just for the
Hmm.
being able to operate them as separate packages. But
Well, and
I
I
will
think
say,
you made the right choice as the max unit. I was thinking about this earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt you because as much as I love the two min units and the freedom to be able to move them around is really nice, you went for the extra solo package. And that list in particular is your kind of no-brainer drop into your three flag scenarios. And so you need the solos and you need them to be able to be mobile. And you're not always going to get incubi off of troops. And sometimes your opponent knows that's your game plan and they specifically deny killing your birds. And if it's min units of birds versus creating incubi, sometimes they're like, all right, murder chickens. I'm going to just leave you to annoy the shit out of me this game. And it benefits them to not kill them.
in the
So
first
having the
game,
max unit, it's hard to ignore them.
I actually used both of my spell martyrs. I eruptioned 2 turns in a row to kill gremlin swarms.
So good.
Because I was able to, like, it was close enough to something where even though they had stealth, I would cast eruption on something else, and then the gremlin swarm would take a POW 14. So I was getting like two things with that eruption, and I actually found, I'm like, man, only hard part about using my spell martyrs for that is that I don't have them to go on flags. Um, but I will say, just afterthoughts on the Thagrosh list. Um, it still didn't quite do enough, and I really noticed that Typhon and the Warmongers struggled. I
Mm-hmm.
got lucky in the third game where we actually had a reasonable table that wasn't just rubble like everywhere, and it made Typhon and the Warmongers playable. But on most tables, I found there was, with no hills anymore, there was just more rubble, there's more difficult
Mm-hmm.
terrain, and that
More
created
houses too, just
problems.
in a way.
Yeah. Right. And so non-flying, non-pathfinder, except for 1 turn, they just oh, and not having the +2 inches of deployment hurts
Mm-hmm.
hurts the warmongers for sure. So that list I'm recalibrating because it didn't quite feel like it was what I wanted it to be. But yeah, it was good experimenting. I'm glad I got some new Callus games in, and I liked testing out Thags. Like, I love my Thagrosh shirt, right? When I wear it, I was like, I got to play some Thags games, but I haven't found a Thags list, either one or two, that really hits home for me. But you got out and got to do a tournament as well, and yours was a little bit more of a big deal than mine.
Well, I finally got to go to the Phoenix Open. I live here now, which makes it a lot easier. I'm actually podcasting from my office for once.
Woo!
Um, and I'd been trying to make it out to the Phoenix O a few times, just because it was close enough to Cali that it was a reasonable flight for me. But now that I live here, it's a great event. It's run by Tyson and Will, who are the same guys who run LVO, which is our favorite con of the year, which is coming up again. And it ran smooth. There were a lot of great people. We had like one of the entire WTC teams show up and play, and I got to play some really good people, and it was a blast, man. I brought Animag and Thags, basically the same list I brought to LVO with some minor post Oblivion tweaks.
You want to give us kind of a like highlights of?
Yeah, definitely. Um, so I knew going into this that it was going to be a Shark Tank, and then I
Yeah,
wanted to be able to play cleanly and play
it
well.
was going to be
And I
more
didn't
than a
want to be
Shark Tank. It was
guessing.
going to be like a Sharknado.
Yes, Sharknado. I like that, especially since I think they all have dolphins on their jerseys. Um, so Dolphin NATO maybe. But I knew I was gonna play Animag. I just really love her. I think she's primed for the meta. Like since you were like, "Hey, Emmanuel, you need to come back and play some Legion," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And you're like, "Well, there's this girl named Animag."
Yeah.
Um, and we got that list for me, and I've been playing the shit out of it, and it's still to this day is my favorite list. I just love to play it. And so the
So
first
it's been a
round,
while. What's the list?
yeah, definitely. I guess I should recap that. It's Animag, Blightbringer, Harrier. It's a War Chief and Gremlin Swarm, two Spell Martyrs, a unit of Warmongers with Gorag, two units of Chosen, two Hellmouths for free, and a Muck. Gorag is the other free
Yeah.
model, obviously. And then for my Thagrosh list, it was Thags one, and instead of bringing in the three character heavies, I dropped Zuriel for a Seraph and a Protector. Um, I share your sentiment that Thags one is definitely better into guns than most of our casters. And a Protector is really useful just because, like, in the aura with Unyielding, obviously it has really good armor, but it helps deliver Azrael, and that's really the key of the list is just thunder dunking on people.
Thunderdunk.
Thunder dunk. Um, and so I ran the full unit of Hex Hunters with Bale, double Incubi as my free points. I brought the Gatorman Bokur with Shamblers and a what are the fish sticks guys called?
Misspeaker.
Misspeaker, thank you. A Misspeaker and some Shepherds, I think.
Yeah. Sounds right.
I'm doing this all off memory because I'm
Yeah.
looking at my phone instead of using it.
Yeah.
And the first round I got Convergence, and he played Mother, and man, I wish I had my phone because I took pictures of everybody's sheets and I talked with everybody about their thoughts about the game, and I wish I could give them better shout outs. But um, he felt that he needed the double battle engines to push through a lot of the boxes that I had in the list. And that their ability to get all the dice on the guns was really going to pay off for him. And in my opinion, going into this, I was like, all right, I've got Animag and Double Chosen, and they can punch a hole through any brick wall. Let's see if I can get like both battle engines this game. And I might have to trade a unit of Chosen for the first battle engine, then send the second unit of Chosen after the second battle engine, and just kind of position on the table and see how the rest of it goes. And he had the Colossal with the toe drag, which is really the one thing I had to worry about this game. And so I used the Warmongers on the same side of the table as Animag to try to clutter up the lanes as much as possible. And in the end of it, after I take his first tap off the table, he goes for the assassination drag. Animag bumps after we laser it, and he shakes. And I'm like, "Are you sure you want to shake? You don't want to play it out?" And he's like, "No, because next turn you kill my tap, and then you probably finish off my Colossal with your Gargantuan, and then it's just like Mother versus your army." Um, he did get some good shooting. He took one unit of Chosen down to basically a min unit, and my Warmonger is down to like three or four of them. But with the feat, I was able to trade up really heartily and get great position out of it. So going into my second game, I played into Minoth, and this game was really interesting. He dropped Harbinger on me with double Archons and Faithful Masses, and I thought I should maybe drop Thagrosh into this because she's a big parade float. I know she's got the 9 shield guards, but that list does like really put a lot of pressure on her to continue to martyr. And we could play the long game, and I'll probably be able to play on scenario because it was a incursion scenario, which Harbinger just loves because she's got all the solos.
Yeah, for sure. Solos that don't
And
die.
solos that don't die, and my Animag list is not. It's got the Feral Geist, but it doesn't have all the solos that my Thagrosh list has.
Well, that Incorporeal is going to do wonders against an army where everything has magical weapons, right?
Right.
Or sorry, not Feral
Um,
Guys, but your
yeah.
Your
Gremlin
Javelin
Swarm.
Swarm.
So I still ended up playing Animag because I thought, all right, her feat gives me one turn where he can't martyr anything. And if I push the cav right down the middle, I'm going to put a lot of pressure on Harbinger. And then if he splits up with his Archons and tries to flank using their speed, I'll turtle up in the middle and we'll fist fight and see how this game goes. And I'll play the long game with him. And it's so we learned something this game, both players, and we kind of nodded at how this ends up going. But I come down to like 2 minutes and some change left on my clock. And he's like, when I realized clock was going to be an issue, he was like 20 minutes up on me and ended up with like 12 minutes on me at the end. And so Tyson came over to watch the game, and I'm like, all right, my only chance is to go for an assassination, and I have to do exactly this. First thing I have to do is I have to move my Blightbringer out, and he's going to shoot at Harbinger because she's not being protected by anything right now. She ran off onto the flank to go be safe. If I get one good shot on her, I can go over top of her focus transfer and then probably get some really good damage on her. And so I do exactly that. I boost a hit, I boost damage, I get some great damage on her. And then I spend the rest of my turn punching his solos and going, okay, let's see if he's going to martyr. And he did. He kept martyring down to like a couple boxes. And I was like, all right, so he does not see that I have an assassination run. And then just as I've got like 45 seconds, maybe 50, maybe 30 seconds left on my clock, I'm like, all right, Gorag charges. And Gorag charges from all the way on this really skewed angle, and we have to get the laser out, and there's only a couple seconds left on the clock. And I throw my dice, and the clock goes off. And we ruled it that because I rolled the dice, I get to finish the final dice roll. I finish the final dice roll. I kill Harbinger because Gorag has Gorag's amazing mat and powerful charge and gets the charge. I win. However, after the entire event is over, the next day we're all having barbecue back in my backyard. Will's like, no, you technically didn't win that game. I mean, we rolled it like that, and so that's just kind of how it happened, but you don't win. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, in the rules, as soon as the death clock goes off, you die. Your caster dies. And so you don't get that second dice roll, even though you rolled the hit. You don't get to roll for damage. So
weird scenario, weird situations.
Weird situations, but in the moment, like the player and I had both agreed he had, made a lot of mistakes that game, and he had kind of fallen into the trap, and I had played it out all the way to the last couple seconds. And because we had to laser it and his dispute over whether Gorag could get in, I probably would have got the die roll anyways. But for future reference,
yeah,
that happened. Moving on to the third round, I played into Scorn. My opponent played Zal 2, and his Zal 2 is actually a Zal 2 list I like because I played something very similar when I was playing him, which is Zal 2 with double battle engine, double units, and then the Mammoth. And I played against this almost exact list at LVO. And so I had already basically practiced, but it was playing Callus into it and not Animag. And I was like, all right, well, Animag can beat the hell out of Scorn. She's got the healing feat.
God, like one unit of Warmongers into Zal 2, it's just like all of them die. Like there's no tough checks. Like they end up being effective, like, so they're 14 up to 16. Then they have Dark Shroud, so they're effectively POW 18s even before the Blightbringer, right? Like,
yeah,
they kill Immortals on very low rolls, and then Berserk into the next one and kill it, and then its friend too.
Yep. In this game, I got him up, I think, to the POW 20s and killed an entire unit. So basically how it went, there's a big house in the middle, and I knew that I could basically shadow Animag and get her real far up there so that his Mammoth couldn't shoot at me. I'd use my Hellmouth to picket line, and then I was like, all right, the only way I get a battle engine is if I trade up this game. So I've got to really push in with my feet, but not commit my cav. because if I can get a lot with my feet without committing my cav, I'll win the battle engines. But if I have to commit my cav, his battle engines come in, sweep a whole unit down by themselves, and I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
I've lost too many cavs to the stupid scoring battle engine, so I was like, all right, this is how it's going to have to happen. And 2 games in a row, the War Chief is my MVP. So in the Harbinger game, his veteran leader bonus mattered over and over and over again. And it also, like, he was just doing work every turn, charging something, putting a good hit on it, forcing a martyr, something. But in this game, because of the way the house is positioned, I run him up directly behind it, so he's given basically the whole field the bonus. And then my opponent puts his first unit of Exalted on the flank of the house, so that way my Cav don't have a good charge on it. But the War Chief, under Feat, under Carnage, under Blightbringer, or just went in and was like, you don't have a unit anymore. And so now it was like, oh, you're going to trade your battle engine for my solo and some Hellmouth stuff. Because otherwise you're eating a cab charge next turn. And on the other side of the table, he had he had triggered Vengeance with his Mammoth on my Warmongers. So they got the stupid long charge and killed a whole unit of Exalted, but then put themselves in a position to where if his battle engine goes in on the Exalted or goes in on the Warmongers, the Blightbringer kills it. And so now it's just his Mammoth versus basically my army. But we come down to another turn, and this happens a lot with Animag, where you're out attrition your opponent, and they find themselves in a bad position. They're like, I'm going to assassinate Animag. And it's like, no, you're not. Animag's sitting in a trench next to the Blightbringer, like camping 3 with a Harrier hidden in a forest so that I have something beautiful to transfer to just when you think you've got it. And he had to do some unboxing and moving and killing of models to try to get his Mammoth into a position to where he could shoot Animag, and can't do it, and gets into a position where he can basically shoot one of his own models and try to blast Animag to death, and it doesn't happen. So he shakes and he's like, yeah, I just could not trade well that game. And so I went into round 4, and I played against Peter Lepard.
Sounds right.
And he was playing Crucible Guard, and I made a critical error here. I played Thagrosh instead of Animag, and I was like, you know what? I should play Animag. I'm on a roll with her. I'm feeling real good. And I'm like, I've played her in a Crucible Guard before, and it's not a great match. But in my mind, I didn't register why it wasn't a great match. And it's because they typically have their Colossal, which shuts down my healing. But Peter's list didn't have that. What he did have is all the sprays for days with Explosivo to RFP everything under the sun, including my heavies. And so he tables me post haste, and that was that. Thags may be good in the guns, but he's not good into that gun. But had I played Animag, I feel like I probably could have just run my Chosen into engage a lot of his guns, force down the scenario. He didn't have a lot in the list that was going to easily deal with the Blightbringer, and just try to get up on attrition and bully him out of the zones. But hindsight's 2020, so all you can do is just take that on the chin and go, you zigged instead of zagged, buddy.
Yep, that happens.
I did end up making it into day 2 Masters after that, but I had a barbecue, and so didn't go.
Barbecue is important. Although you realize, like, if Pagani were listening to this, he would be like, it's not a barbecue, it's a grill or a grill out.
Sure.
But
I do have some post Phoenix Open thoughts though, for sure.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, do you see? I mean, Animag is still your girl, but do you have any like potential adjustments to that list? Like, I know we've thrown all sorts of lists on the table, but every time I see a Blightbringer Golab list, I'm like, I like Blightbringer and Golab. I just don't like what the rest of the list ends up looking like. And so I'm kind of curious if you found something that shifts that up at all that you like.
I did, and so I made a similar comparison that you made, and I think it's coming from looking at the meta a little bit and going, okay. And granted, the data isn't necessarily supporting all of my thoughts here, but I'll go over that. Basically, my first thought is very similar to yours in that the tables have changed a lot post Oblivion. It's not like it was before, where you'd see 2 to 3 hills and then maybe a house and some rubble and a
Yeah.
forest. Now you see like 2 or 3 forests and 2 or 3 rubbles and then maybe a house or two
Yeah.
and a trench. And you're like, shit, there is a lot of rough terrain on the tables more than there used to. Like at Phoenix Open, what they did was they said, all right, we're still going to use our hill templates, but we're going to put a rock on top of them. And every one of these hills is a rubble. And then I don't know if you remember LVO, but LVO had a shit ton of hills. I mean, there were like two to
Yes.
three per table. So now we had 2 to 3 rubbles per table. And I felt my warmongers sluggish. And despite their feet, many feet to get through like a single patch of rough terrain, there was multiple times where 1 or 2 warmongers would be caught in a piece of rough terrain or something, or just not be able to complete a successful charge because it clips a piece of a
Or they're
forest or
just not
something.
getting far enough to threaten that vengeance. Like they need to be
Yeah,
far enough up the table that they are like,
that's
I'm
too.
either taking shit or you're triggering vengeance. And it all matters. Like a little bit of rough
The
terrain, 2 inches less deployment.
Yes.
They're just lagging.
I also feel Animax probably the one caster that doesn't need Gorag as much because she makes hitting really easy in an already very accurate list. And Gorag and the Warmongers in particular, their best shtick is hitting high defense troops and mowing them off the table. But high defense single wound troops aren't really a thing right now.
Yeah.
Even like high defense medium troops aren't as much of a thing right now. Um, so I played a game recently that was kind of similar to your list, but instead of running GoLab, Nerf, I ran GoLab and a Seraph. And the rest of the army, I brought a unit of birds and some extra solo support. And I really liked having GoLab with her and just having the extra healing denial. I really liked having the full unit of birds. I feel like in my pair, her job is just to smack the shit out of a brick. And while the warmongers can do that and they can get super high power and they have a reach, they're limited by their model count. And there's a lot of things that can shut down their berserk. And there were enough times where I thought, okay, this could be something else. That having the Rot Wings in there gives me another unit with flight. They are great at blowing things up. Recently, I had them take a Convergence battle engine, or not battle engine, but Colossal off the table with GoLab. So um, I poke it for like 2, send in the birds, send in GoLab, dead Colossal. And you're just like, that feels right. Like, this feels good.
Yeah.
And I feel like in this meta, blowing up armor is just one is an auto list for me. Um, I think I would see if there was a way that I could tweak that list to have GoLab and a Blightbringer and maybe a main unit of birds to escort around GoLab. Because if I'm trading Gorag and the Warmongers, like the only thing I think I would reach for in that point slot or a similar point slot would be GoLab. He just does a lot of work. He threatens. He's a war beast, and he's value. Um, I think Legion has some of the best value pieces, so capitalizing on that is really important. Um, my second list, so or right before the event, you looked at me, Charles, and you were like, "You should play Callus," and I was like, "Nah, man, I played Callus at LVO, and everybody's playing Callus. People are gonna be prepped for Callus. I'm not gonna play Callus. I'm gonna snowflake it with that rush, like Thunder
You are
Dunkers.
a really cute snowflake, though.
I try real hard." And every time I thought about playing Thagrosh, I thought, man, Callus would be really good right now because of the scenario. Callus would be really good right now because he forces my opponent to deal with a different problem than anime. Like, I just, I found myself wishing I had brought Callus instead of Thagrosh. And at the end of the day, as much as I love that Thagrosh list, I just don't know I don't like it as much in the meta. So like focusing a lot on single wound troops and then a couple of heavies means that if your opponent can victimize any part of that, you are very short pointed. And there's enough RFP out there right now that gives Thagros some pause. And he doesn't have to be or drop into all of those things, but figuring out what the drop is into Crucible Guard and Gunlines is really important for a Animag pair. And you said something, I think it was today or was it yesterday when we were talking about Veil that really, really caught my attention. And I was like, oh shit, like that is a hella good tactic.
Oh, I think we're gonna talk about that in the next report, so we'll get to that thought. Let's
Nice.
talk about Animag for a minute. So you started modifying and making
Mhm.
male Animag, and so you inspired me, but this was all your idea. So let's start with
Yeah.
your shenanigans.
Well, Animag did real for me at the Phoenix Open. She's one of my favorite casters. I just never have been super behind the model. Only
Nobody likes the
because,
model. I've never heard anyone be like, "I like the Animag model. It's great."
well, and like I don't hate it because it's kind of got that like orc goblin king feel to it, like this old queen crone, old witch feel, like the dragon witch. I get it,
I'm
but
fine with the
like
feel. I just don't think it's even a good execution on that.
I'm fine with it, but fine isn't what I want to be with my best warcaster. It's not.
Yeah.
I want something that is just all the bells and whistles. And I always felt like Animax model didn't match the theme that they. I mean, like every other ogre in the entire Iron Kingdom is ripped, and I don't mean like they're just kind of muscular. Like they're fucking giants, man. They're like bodybuilders on roids. They're huge. Animag is the only one. She's got snacking as a rule, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was like a bodybuilder style Animag that was like eating her victims for protein and like
Yeah.
killing them herself and stuff. And so I was like, how can I do this? And I was trapped in, where was I? Des Moines, Iowa. And I went to a game shop out there and I saw they had a bunch of Legion stuff. And I was like, all right, they got Animag, they got Gorag, they got a War Chief, they got the UA for the War Spears. Let me grab all these pieces and see if I can make a mod for it. And sitting there with all of them, the one that stood out to me was that Gorag and Animag's pieces were about the same scale, and they
Yep.
fit really well. And I was like, okay, this is something I like. And Gorag always felt like he was a very Legion feeling, like dragon-esque feeling ogre, and like he really was the epitome of the faction
Yeah,
for
he's
an ogre.
exactly the. I mean, he wasn't out when I got into the game, but he's the exact sort of feel where like I liked Thagrosh and I liked Warmongers, and Gorag is like right in there with that. Like,
Oh yeah, he's the jelly for the donut for sure. So I
I'm
put it
not sure I
together.
like that analogy.
And I feel really comfortable about it. So I add a little bit of sculpt into the back of his arm and put a feral geist on the base to kind of represent the ritual slaughter so that he's like fueling himself with death. And it was really coming together. And I was like, all right, so now if I paint him up to be really glowing and like he's casting magic and he's got a different pose, then it'll be really different than Gorag, and you'll be able to tell the difference on the table. And then several people pointed out that the back piece was still a little too Gorag original. And then you pointed
It
out like
looks
maybe
really
do something
cool
different
though. Like,
with
I
that.
get why you left it because it looks fucking awesome.
Well, I took it off, so I ended up
Yeah.
taking it off. But I left it on Gorag because I like it, and I ended up taking my original Gorag's horns off just because the rest of the Warmongers don't really have the horns, and so cutting them down and then painting them as the little nubs like the rest of them have looked great. And then I think the little back piece that came from my Mana Mag, and whatever we're gonna call him, her, um,
Animagus.
yeah, the little back piece that came from that, I think I'm gonna put on a female Animag model because I was like, what? I gotta use this little flag somewhere. Like it's so cool. It's such a great bit.
I think I'm gonna use mine and make a Legion flag that I'm gonna carry around for my
Oh,
scenarios.
nice. I
I'm gonna
used what's her name? The Blighted Bather on a large base with a bunch of the rubber duckies as my objective. But that is really good. Having your own flag, super legit. I might have to do that
Um,
next.
so you totally inspired me because I really liked when I was seeing it, and I liked how well the arms look on Gorag. Like with very little modification, the arms look great on him. And but when I was looking at yours, I'm like, we've gotta, as when we were talking about it, like the banner's too much. It doesn't matter that it looks cool. It makes it look too much like Gorag. And then his horns are really unique. So the horns got to change. Originally, I was suggesting like trim them down like Hellboy horns. But the other day I was looking at it, I'm like, I'm not really playing Warmongers right now. And I have no desire to play Animag like Animag. And so I just pull the arms off the model.
Yeah.
I just like, I just pop them off and I like take the arms off of Gorag and I start putting them on. And I'm like, okay, but I kept looking at yours and I'm like, I agree that it just looked at the first round when it still had like the horns and it still had the back piece. And so I'm like, got the arms on and mine are in a little different position than yours. And I left it on the base of how I was doing Gorag before. But I'm like, all right, what else am I going to do? So I just like, I take his horns off. I'm like, maybe he's going to be like bald. And then I'm like, you know what? I need to make him look more like the Animag model. But I'm like, okay, none of the other, none of the other Ogren except her have hair.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decide to try my hand and I make green stuff long, like Fabio hair for
It looks
my.
good.
I am actually really happy with how that turned out. It's one of those things where the cosplay side of things and me like hand sculpting and hand manipulating things has got me a little bit more comfortable. Then afterwards, I'm like, I clip down his horns and I like just put a little bit of each horn in. And I liked how that looked. But I've added something else that you haven't seen. I sculpted a cloak.
Nice.
And
I
so
saw you
basically,
mention that. I want to do the same thing.
yeah. So I have this cloak on his right shoulder he has the big armor piece, and then on the
Mm-hmm.
left shoulder he's got the wolf, right?
Yeah.
So my concept is that he's got this cloak that basically connects to the right shoulder. So it goes from the back of the right shoulder, big draping cloak, and then it comes under his arm, up his chest, and connects to that shoulder piece.
Nice.
And so what's weird is I sculpted it partially out of green stuff and partially out of high HD foam clay. So his
Nice.
cloak is actually a little flexible, but I actually found that the foam clay was really nice because it wasn't taking my fingerprints as much as the green stuff was. And so I was able to like manipulate it and get folds and stuff that I liked. And then I just let it dry overnight. And then I kind of combined it with some green stuff for like some of the parts that I was going to have to be a little bit more forceful with. Um, and I'm really liking how it's going to turn out. I'm going to do another like little 360 video of it, but it's making me pretty excited to try Animag. Because I feel like it's drifting away from that Gorag look, and it's especially with the added cloak, it looks bulky. It looks like this like hulking Ogren mage, and
Nice.
I'm digging. It kind of reminds me of like a WoW shaman, like an orc shaman.
Nice.
It kind of reminds me of like some blend of like an enhancement shaman even a bit. So I'm excited to try it out and like show people this modification. I still want to do a little bit more. I want to add some like dangling bones and stuff and like get her stuff in there and maybe get the spirits from Gatsby 2 and
Mm.
paint them up like little blighted spirits and like interweave them in there as well, something like that. Again, stuff that's going to really like contrast it compared to a Gorag. So people are going to look down and they're not going to think Gorag. Um, but
Nice. You know, you
so
inspired me as well. Like, so you said you were gonna do the cloak, and I'm like, damn, I'm gonna steal that idea since he stole
yeah,
mine.
absolutely.
Um,
All of the
I
spare.
ended up going with a fur cloak. So I just got
Oh,
my mini crate model for the new paladin, the lady paladin,
yeah.
shield sister, and she has this big fur cloak. And I always imagined since like Minoth and the worm have always been going at it that she had killed some warp wolf and slung it over her shoulder and was using it as a cloak. And then I thought, oh man, a mag, you know you're getting a fur cloak now because you're fabulous.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and so I've started to slowly sculpt a large fur cloak that's going to go on his back. connect to the werewolf, and then come down behind him. I'm gonna do the inside like hide and the backside like white fur.
Are you gonna drape it up the chest like into the other shoulder pad, the way that
So
I
I'm
did?
not sure yet. I've thought about it, and I may just do it as like a single side cloak that goes down to his waist. I may end up just doing it as a single elbow or shoulder cloak that connects like a mercenary style to his shoulder pad.
Yeah, wait until you see mine. I do think that the piece of the cloak coming across his chest
Mhm.
breaks up the Gorag look. Like it starts really, even though it's like the less interesting part of that design, I think it helps it not look like Gorag. So
Well, once I see yours, I'll make the decision because I still haven't put my cloak on yet. It's still in the sculpting phase. So once I see yours, I'll know for sure.
I was really hesitant, especially after I liked how well the hair turned out. I was really hesitant about like adding more stuff on there. I'm like, I'm liking how it looks. I'm gonna wreck it. But I'm actually uh but
Oh man, I had that exact thing with some off models recently. I feel you. I was like, I'm gonna magnetize more things, and then I was like, why am I just wrecking models?
yeah,
Stop.
I'm gonna destroy this. Anyway, there's one other tournament I want to talk about before we wrap up. So we had another tournament this last weekend, and I decided specifically I don't want to play Callus. Um and so I will, truth be told, I actually have a Callus list that I want to try, but I did not have everything painted for it. And so I'm like, I'm not going to play the other Callus list. I know what I like about that. I want to try something else. And so for this, I decided to, again, I wanted to try an all beast list. And so I made an Absalonia 2 list that was Proteus, Golab, Seraph, and then two Nerifs, I believe. And it's got, oh, and a Carnivean. And then it's got Amok, it's got double Hellmouth, it's got two Forsaken, and it's meant to be kind of a more classic style Legion, but you have Proteus that can like gank in clockatrices. That was kind of one of my main,
Gobble 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 gobble.
yeah. Um, or just something that I felt like I could play into a really beast oriented scenario. Um, anyway, that was the idea. And then I wanted to play Veil 1 again. And she was one that, if you remember, I was sitting down at LVO trying to figure out how to practice Veil 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I was putting all these different lists together and I was really stumbling because it was like as soon as I expanded her beast package, she lost a free model. And so I was really struggling to change it up and try to give her any more beasts, and so I stuck with the 4 units.
Mm-hmm.
Then I really liked playing her with 4 units. So when the Oblivion changes hit, I was like, I don't really want to drop a unit for a Nera for something. I think she runs the units amazing. And being able to shuffle around all the units and have insight affect the units, like, it's just money. But I really felt like, especially after the game against Jaden, when I realized as soon as she takes a couple of hits, like the Seraph and Golab run out of boxes real fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed something else that she could transfer to, whether it was a protector or a harrier, something else in there, maybe a Nerif. But every time I put together a list, it didn't feel quite right. And in the end, what I've decided to do is based on my prior games where I felt like the warmongers were lacking. I'm like, okay, so here's the thing I'm going to cut then. I'm going to cut warmongers. Even though I like them, I liked what they did with Veil. Um, that'll be the thing that I cut. And Baldur's picked up too, and that's a thing that denies Pathfinder. So having more flying models is
Mm-hmm.
again, advantageous. So I decide I'm going to stick with the 4 units. I'll go double Chosen and double Rotwings.
Mm.
And so everything is like speed 7, so it all moves around really effectively with her feet. Um, and so what that does is I gain a point because 13 versus 12, and then the free Gorag makes my Amok free. So
Mm-hmm.
I gain a total of 5 points. And that allows me to expand her solo package and stick in a Harrier. And while I was hesitant, I wanted something that was going to do work. I'm like, well, at least the Harrier gets me something that I just can either one, rile it for one so that she can still transfer to it, and not have too much fury on my other beasts. And it gives me, just some boxes, so at least, I can have something to transfer to that's not going to be one of my important essential pieces.
When you're
Because I
playing an
want,
insight caster, that matters.
yes. So, and I was like, okay, man, it gets me a Feral Geist and 2 Spell Martyrs, and I have a Harrier. So I like the solo package, and I like the overall look of the list. First game, God, what was my first round now? It feels like it was forever ago. Oh, I get to play an opponent I used to play a lot back in Mark II, and he used to play Crix, and now he plays minions. And I knew he brings 2 lists, but he basically just plays Arcadius. And even though I felt like the scenario I could have potentially played Absalonia, but if I put my beast versus his beast with Primal and Crippling Grasp and the feat to like super extend all of his threat ranges, he's going to alpha the shit out of me. And I knew I needed to chew, like, I needed to drop Veil and force him to chew on birds instead. And so he runs forward. I move up. I keep pretty much all my important stuff far enough back that if he's going to feat, he's really just getting birds. And so he doesn't feat. He sprays a few things down. He gets into the scenario, but he got good work done. He probably killed like half of my birds, but it's not what he wanted to kill, right? And so, yeah, he killed stuff, but then I start taking stuff from him and go up on scenario, and he comes in and he does get to like kill some chosen and kill a bunch of birds, but now shit's in insight range, and since he had to come into me, now he loses like 3 heavies the next turn. And so he goes for a primal shock assassination on Veil and then doesn't get it. He was gonna have to roll well, and so that game wraps up, and then I get another minions game. And again, I feel like I need to drop Veil because I feel like he's gonna put Maylock into me, and he's got like 5 min posse and 2 primal archons, and I just think that I'm not going to be able to hit hard enough on his feet turn, and so I'm going to have to weather that counter attack. And I just didn't think Absalonia was going to be able to do that. This game, unfortunately, Robbie played it great. I played it like shit. The one thing I did decide to do is I actually decided to go first, which I think was the right call. But I realized I have almost no practice going first. And I ran up the table. I stayed out of his threat ranges, but I was set up terribly to alpha him. And I ended up wasting like 25 minutes trying to like unpackage my stuff so I could pull his gators out of his feet. And like, it was awful. It was just awful. I was so tangled up. It was a nightmare. I did very little work. I wasted like 25 minutes, and I'm like, I need to play this list differently when I go first. So it was great that I got that lesson in. Robbie just stayed in, played a really good methodical game. I did set up a terrible counter charge, which really screwed up one of my chances to potentially come back. But I realized my playstyle right now is not good into Primal Archons. The Primal Archons being able to Shadowbind my sprinting stuff, real bad for me. And so that changed up a lot of strategy where I had to really be thinking about how I approach those models and what I drop into them and how I plan to deal with them. I knew I needed to not use they're a perfect target for GoLab to just go in, murder, and then get out of there, but that's just not going to happen. So I kept getting choked up on that. There was a point where I was ready to clear the zone, and I had actually, like, my Seraph spiked really high in damage on his Bone Swarm, and I'm like, oh, it's only got like 3 boxes left. Let me charge it with this tentacle, and it's in insight range, and the tentacle triggered counter charge, and the Primal Archon charges into the zone. And now I can't even kill the Bone Swarm, because if Golab goes up to kill the Bone Swarm, he's going to get Shadowbound. And even if I kill the Archon and the Bone Swarm, he's going to be in charge range of the Wrestler who's sitting back there. And so I just can't use Golab basically that turn. I was like, fuck, that was awful. Um, but I learned some very important lessons. And I also I kept actually getting work out of the Harrier. Like the Harrier started just like insight. I'm like, oh, I'm at 7 pound 12. I will go finish this thing off. And I was finding I'm really liking this Harrier. So now I'm 1-1, and which is not my favorite place to be. And it's only a 3-round tournament. I go into the last round, and I'm playing against someone who usually plays Legion, but they've switched back to Signar. So I'm about to get slowed for the first time. Not bringing Callus, not bringing anything. Like he's like, I lost to Legion last round, but Blightbringer and Callus chosen that are armor 19 is a lot harder to deal with than your armor 17 chosen. I'm like, mm-hmm. So he wins the roll to go first, so he's going to be able to advance up the table. I can't put my Hellmouths anywhere reasonable to threaten anything because they will die turn 1. Top of 1, those hunters will just kill them. So I don't have my Hellmouths in great positions, and he moves forward. And this is one of the cool things that I realized this game, but I realized it about a minute too late. This would have been a good opportunity to just run the Chosen 14 inches forward, feet, and have them walk another 7 and engage all of his hunters. They don't have parry anymore, and they don't have gunfighter. And so I could have probably had every hunter engaged with 2 Chosen. And yeah, I probably would have lost some Chosen, but not nearly as much as I was going to lose anyway. So anyway, I run everything forward. I'm like, nope, I can't feat because my birds are all choking up the Chosen because I didn't think about this until after I'd already moved my birds. So it is what it is. He goes. He kills most of my Chosen and almost all of my birds with Sloan and her feat turn. Like, I'm literally playing, I'm down to less than half my army. But it's the incursion type of scenario, so I clear off the 2 flags that I can. I contest his. I go up. He had scored. No, he hadn't scored yet. I contest his. I go up 3-0. And so then he's able to contest mine, and he goes up. I don't think he was able to score any of the flags, but he scored in his zone. Or no, maybe he scored in 1. But either way, he then kills both of the spell martyrs, so I'm not going to have them for controlling flags anymore. But he just can't stay relevant. Like, he keeps shooting with the hunters, and he's getting work done, but now without the feat, the rest of the army is just not coming off the table that fast. And I'm eventually able to take control of the scenario, and he... at one point, Vale's actually on the middle flag in the middle of the table with like 4 Fury on her. And just kind of like, bitch, let's do this.
Nice.
But I was surprised that I was able to pull that out. Even losing half the army, the problem is that Sloan army still just folds. Like, the Minutemen die really easy. Like, with Insight, and like that shit just doesn't stay in the game. And I think I could have positioned it differently. And I think what happens the next time you play that is he can't run all the way forward because he's got to make sure he stays out of the run and engage range with the feet. But that means he doesn't get to aim as much. And if he does aim, and with some of them, they're pretty far back. So it starts shifting up the math for some of that stuff. Because there was just a lot of things that would have been engaged and unable to shoot, like his like little trencher units with the Grievous Wounds gun, like all that stuff would have been engaged if he runs it all the way forward. So he was like, I have to stay further back, and then that changes the game. And I needed to not give him so many birds since I wasn't going to feat. The birds needed to hang back more and give me more late game pieces. Because there's one point I'm like, I just don't have enough attacks because all of his Minutemen were spread out. So Golab could kill any of them, but couldn't get any 2 in reach at the same time. But I did think afterwards, I'm like, Vale is 27 Warbeast points. Animag is 27 Warbeast points. I'm going to take my Vale list and I'm going to play it with Animag. And that sounds super fun. But I still have some more lists I want to try. I have a few more beast oriented lists that I want to try as well, and I'm painting stuff up for that. Uh, but I'm pretty excited about where Legion is at the moment, and I've been painting more stuff. I'm working on the animag. I got a lot of stuff to try, but I'm going to Warfare weekend, and so I've got maybe one or two tournaments before that to practice. But I'm going to be ready. I think I'm just going to like do the last chance qualifier grind and just see. It's been a while since I've done it. I think I did it in like 2013 or something. But I think I'm ready.
That'll be fun.
Yeah. Where it was the run and engage everything with Vale's feet that got you thinking, right?
Mm-hmm. Without a doubt.
There's not a.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's not a lot of situations where that's the right call, but I think against that Sloan list, the Vale list truly can just engage all of his shit with Chosen, and he gets screwed. I don't think they'll ever make that mistake more than once, but how often do you play against Vale?
I think the other places, and it's true. I think that dark horse factor into some gun lines who have never seen it are just going to go, whoops, I was not ready for that. I lost.
Yeah.
I think that the run and engage is always something I've done. Like with my Thagrosh list, it was Hex Hunters. I just like being able to jam. I think it's one of the strongest abilities you can do is say, here are models, give me time and board position. And with the scenarios being as live as they are, there are factions like Retribution, for example, who have some really powerful gun lines. Signar is coming back in a really hard way right now. Minoth has some very respectable gun lines. Crucible Guard has some very respectable gun lines. So it's not as gun heavy as some of the other metas we have seen, but we're starting to see some reemergence of some really respectable gun lines. And I think being able to say, all right, here is 2 units of Chosen. Can you chew through them with your shooters is a tactic. And like you said, board position matters a lot. If you can then push them back and hold them in a position where they're not going to be relevant to scenario and you can score out, you can win that game handily. And, with Vale, you can do the run and feet. With some of the other casters, they don't necessarily have the same option. But if you position it to where, like with Animag, you threaten with her feet, and then they come in, and then you still run your Chosen, you can hold on to your feet and say, all right, the turn afterwards, whatever Chosen are left are just going to onesies and twosies murder your light jacks or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, it does not take much to bring them down, especially when you have all the accuracy from Vale. But it did make me think, like, I am actually not worried about the Sloan matchup with a Blightbringer Callus list. Like, if I'm playing the single birds double Chosen, they're going to have to shoot down the Blightbringer. And then the problem is I still have GoLab and I still have 2 units of Chosen and probably most of my birds or incubi, and they're gonna get rolled by that.
It's true. So, you should definitely focus on your army.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I think they're gonna get too little work done when the hunter shots go from dice -3 to dice -5. Means that's their true. Second shot is maybe doing 2 points.
Yeah.
Right.
The math definitely skews.
Yeah, and that starts making the second shot almost pointless. Where when you're dice -3 and the second shot is hitting for 4 damage, that's finishing off Chosen. And it was doing a lot of work where their Grievous Wounds gun would shoot one, get 3 or 4 points in, and then the other hunter shots that weren't boosted were finishing them off. And
I feel it. I Animag double stack Chosen and put my arm buff on the first unit, so I get them up to arm 21. I'll tuck my Gremlin Swarm up their ass and shoot them, the Gremlin Swarm with the Blightbringer so that they're nice and cozy in the aura and really, really far up there. And then I'll eclipse my second unit behind them to be like, all right, can you chew through this first unit of really buff Chosen? And if you do you not just die to second unit of Chosen? And then they can typically even still be arm 19 because you can run the Blightbringer up or move the Blightbringer up behind them and have it provide the aura to them.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I think we have been recording enough on this one. We've got some more. We want to talk some WTC lists in the future. We've still got some more lists to explore. I know you're digging into the Protectorate. So I don't know if we'll have quite as much Legion tech, but we'll see. Maybe these Animag sculpts will still tempt you.
I still I bring Legion or Minoth every other week to the LGS, but
No.
Minoth is starting to creep up on me more and more. So I just want to play it with all the cool Archons like everybody else.
I know. I feel you. All right. Well, we should wrap up this episode. Listeners, again, thank you for tuning in. We're going to have more Blighted action for you. But for today, I think it's time. Emanuel, hit him with the outro.
The lights out.